The 2016 presidential election is fast approaching, and once again, Americans will go through the charade of thinking their vote counts in choosing their imperial public puppet leaders. Some candidates have names even the average fluoride brain toxic GMO eating Americans may recognize. Douchebag number 1, Jeb Bush. Douchebag number 2, Hillary Clinton. Both keep getting mentioned by the teleprompter reading morons on that box sitting in the middle of so many US subjects' living rooms. The question the government lapdog mouthpiece propaganda machine fails to ask is, do we really want another 4 Bush or Clinton years? Thankfully, the new digital media is screaming this rhetorical question at the top of its lungs. In case you're wondering, the answer is no. With over 300 million people living in America, the country just can't seem to get away from an infestation of society's most vile parasites that are the Bush and Clinton families. What religion are Buddhist monks?
Buddhist monks.
Buddhist monk.
The average dull American thinks a conservative is for less government and a liberal wants more government. The reality is the government is only going to keep expanding whether you like it or not. But the powers that be will let you pick the flavor of your tyranny. So you think you have a choice. Voting sounds about as pleasurable as having to pick out which STD you'd like to have. What flavor of overpaid bureaucrats telling you what to do would you like for this 4 years? Turd sandwich or shit casserole? Has it hit you yet that the system we call government is in a constant growth trajectory that will eventually implode on itself? Would it surprise you if I told you that the Democrats and Republicans are driven by the same motives? So much of society is so dumb, they fail to see that politicians are compulsive liars. They want your vote so that they can stay in power and reap the benefits for their own friends and families. So they say what they think it takes to get your vote. Most politicians put their own self-interest above what's good for America. If we get another Bush or Clinton elected, it will be the worst we could ask for. One of the two families most entrenched in the current system, working to expand their family dynasty. Even if a politician had the desire to do good, because the general public is so stupid and dependent on sucking from the government teat for nourishment, it is not in the interest to pull the plug on even the most wasteful of programs, because that would cause immediate pain. This cannot happen under any selfish president's watch, because then this pain would be associated with them staining their name and making re-election much harder, if not impossible. These days, it is becoming ever more obvious that the Republican conservatives are just as liberal with the nation's purse as a tax and spend liberal. Deficit spending has accelerated under Barack Obama, but it started with George W. Bush. With $18 trillion in national debt, the time has passed for laying blame. If we include the $100 trillion in promises based on our future taxes, selling our children and their unborn children down the river, there's $1 million of debt per citizen, and it's only going up. In reality, every administration since Andrew Jackson is to blame. But we can start with someone more recent and dear to our hearts, George W. Bush, who in 2002 pushed home ownership and helped create the biggest bubble to pop in history.
It is really hard for many low-income families to make the high down payment. And so that's why I've proposed and urged Congress to fully fund the American Dream Down Payment Fund.
By the end of GW's nauseating 2 terms, the cost of wars, bailouts, and stimulus doubled the national debt. When Obama's reign is complete, the debt will basically have doubled as well. One of the biggest government expenses is bailing out the private sector, otherwise known as crony capitalism. The history goes back through many Republican administrations, from Nixon's 1970 Penn Central Railroad, Ford's New York City bailout, Reagan's Illinois Bank, and Bush Sr.'s savings and loan bailout, which was the largest until Fannie and Freddie under the crisis George W. Bush helped create. With Grandpa Prescott Bush and Nazi ties, Papa Bush and the CIA, and W and his Saudi relationships, hasn't America had enough of the Bushes? Hell, even HW's wife said in 2013 in response to a Jeb 2016 question,
there are other people out there that are very qualified, and we've had enough Bushes.
On to the Clinton family. We've only had one president, but we've had his wife Hillary stick around like a nagging cough as a New York senator and Secretary of State during Obama's first term. There are so many reasons not to choose these two clowns, and the main one should be that they're not that different from each other to begin with. Both support endless war. It has been more than a decade since the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and America's entanglements are far from over. Even Nobel Peace Prize having Obama can't help but drop bombs, fund rebels, and start new wars in Pakistan, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Syria. Under Bush, we had Iraq and Afghanistan. During the Clinton years, we saw conflicts in Afghanistan, Sudan, bombings in Kosovo. Regarding Hillary, do you think someone caught up in the Benghazi scandal, funding Libyan rebels and continual civil war, and wants to send arms to expand the Ukrainian war, would tone down on bloodshed as a commander-in-chief? It is obvious establishment Republicans and Democrats both love war. Both are bought and paid for by big business. In 2008, Obama's top donor was Goldman Sachs. For contributors to Hillary Clinton since 1989, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley make up 4 of the top 6. In the 2012 election, Romney was also funded by the big banks. And now, of Romney's top 5 lobbyist bundlers in 2012, who each raised at least $1 million, 4 are supporting or likely to support Bush. If big banks fund the only likely presidential winners, we can expect more bailouts to failing institutions taken from the taxpayers' ever-shrinking pockets. Facing a potential economic collapse worse than 2008, it may not really matter who is elected. In fact, whoever is in office will be blamed for the next crisis that's been a century in the making. Since the 1913 creation of the Federal Reserve, this took the power to create debt-free money away from the United States Treasury. With so much uncertainty in the crazy modern financial world, what would be a 2017 president's agenda? With no public taste for higher taxes or massive structural changes, the government must claw its way through each year just to stay alive. As prosperity wanes, government dependency rises. The 2016 candidates will have to promise goodies to the general populace, but what the sheep won't realize is that first they get the treat, then they get fleeced. 401k nationalization will be the next push that will happen under either liberal or conservative umbrellas. The government is running out of revenue streams and buyers of its out-of-control debt. More and more countries are abandoning the use of the United States dollar as a currency in global trade. This scenario is unprecedented. A new currency will have to be issued most likely in the next 10 years. As the government's risk of collapse gets bigger and bigger, it will seek to grow its power to maintain its monopoly on force, currency, and the economy. As government grows, inversely, individual liberty must therefore shrink. Already our government is recording our emails, phone calls, travel, and financial records, and clamping down on anyone trying to escape the country or take their wealth abroad. We're searched at airports just for wanting to travel, hounded at border security checkpoints up to 100 miles from the actual border, and forced to purchase an increasing amount of services, all under the threat of force by the government. The police state has grown by leaps and bounds every decade for the last 40 years. America has the highest incarceration rate in the world, disproportionately affecting minorities and with punishments for nonviolent crimes. This is not the land of the free anymore, and it will just turn into the land of the even less free under another Bush or Clinton as the new supreme leader. If you recognize the inevitable problems facing this country, you need to act now. You can start by opting out of the system. Share this video or download our free report on 10 steps to take to avoid the next big government president. Go to crushthestreet.com/election2016.